Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our first session of Food Systems in Season. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service in Hernando County, Florida. And joining me today is Wendy Lynch. And Wendy is also with University of Florida Extension. She's a multi-county family and consumer sciences agent. And our special guest for today is Dr. Norma Samuel. And Norma's with Sumter County, and she's going to talk and explain all about growing wintertime vegetables here in Florida. But first, I wanted to very quickly remind everybody that this is just the first of a number of sessions coming up. Next week, we're going to be talking about hydroponics and aquaponics. We'll have Maxine Hunter from Marion County Extension here. And hydroponics and aquaponics is always a very, very popular topic. We get a lot of questions about that. January 21st, we're going to have Sea Grant agent Brittany Hall Sharp also from Hernando County talking on seafood. And Dr. Yi Lin is going to be talking about the importance of safe, clean water. That's very, very important for growing vegetables and everything else that we do out in our yard. And the week after that, January 28th, J.K. Yarborough and Morgan Pinkerton are going to be talking about how to raise honeybees at home and chickens, not necessarily together, but a lot of people are interested in having their own bees and producing their own honey or raising chickens for eggs. Then the week after that, we're going to have an open Q&A session with all of our previous presenters and a couple of other special guests that we're still in the process of inviting right now. So please join us for all of those. And next, we're going to have Wendy explain exactly what food systems are, because you might be wondering why we title this Food Systems and what a food system is. So Wendy, why don't you go ahead and explain what food systems are?
Thank you guys for being here. And so on the next slide, you're going to see a really cool graphic that UFIFAS ICS put together. And it's all about food systems. So if you notice some of the topics that Bill mentioned that are upcoming, those are all a part of our food system. So all the way from food production to our plates and beyond, that includes food waste. So you can see from the farm workers, the farmers themselves, goes through transportation into our stores. So whether it be the grocery store or getting to our farmers market, all the way out to our communities, good nutrition, and then also important for nutrition security, as well as food waste and loss. So all of these are chains in that food supply or in the food system. So if one of those links are broken or disrupted, then it's going to impact a lot of the other areas. And I think we've seen that this year, in the last couple of years, in our grocery stores. So just a highlight of our food system.
Okay, and one of the main goals of this series is to help to equip people to be able to strengthen their own family's food systems. I know, especially since the beginning of COVID, there's been a huge upswing in interest of people wanting to either grow vegetables, grow fruit trees, raise chickens, bees. We get questions about goats and everything imaginable. And we're trying to let everybody know that University of Florida Extension is here to help and give you advice and give you guidance on how to get started and how to be successful at that. So that's kind of the big goal of this whole series here. So Norma Samuel is here today to talk about growing cool season vegetables, which is very, very important topic, especially for people who have just moved to Florida from another state, because the rules for growing vegetables here is very, very different from up north.
And you're certainly correct with that, Bill. And thank you so much for joining us today. And so I'm tasked with the responsibility of giving you some overview of cool season vegetables. And I can go on and on and on, but I'm going to keep what I have to say very brief. And then at the end, I'll show you where you can go to future classes that I have that will give you more in-depth information. So these are the things that I'm going to talk with you briefly about today, just to get you started. So we'll talk about the plant hardiness zones, a great resource that we have called the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. And of course, you cannot be successful with a garden without good soil preparation. We'll talk about seedling production, how to source those seeds, and then I'll talk a little about cool season vegetables. And I'll give you a tour of my personal garden. And we're pretty self-sufficient in the vegetables that we eat. So I will give you a tour of what we have going on out there now. And then at the end of the session, Wendy and I will tell you about the resources that we can share for you to explore further. So this is the USDA plant hardiness zone map. And this is very important for you, whether you're growing a vegetable garden or you're growing ornamentals. It's important that you know what zone you fall in, because that's going to determine what crops you're able to grow. So you can see here from this map, I live in Ocala, and Ocala is in 9A. I work in Sumter County, and Sumter County falls within two zones, which is 9A and 9B. And what this hardiness zone map tells you is the average annual extreme minimum temperatures that you're likely to see. So whenever you're selecting plants to grow, you want to try and select plants that can grow in your zone, or else you're going to have a problem with those plants surviving. Either it may get too cold for them certain times of the year, or it may get too hot, and that will affect how the plants grow. So based on this and the research that has been done by the University of Florida, we have determined appropriate times to plant different plants in Florida. Now, this map is interactive and the link is there, and we will also show you again on the resources. But with this link, you can go and put in your zip code and it will tell you exactly what zone you're in. So if you're not in Central Florida, you're joining us from somewhere else, you can just put in your zip code and it will tell you what hardiness zone you fall in. Now, this is my favorite publication when it comes to vegetable gardening, and it's the most used publication that University of Florida has on its EDIS website. And this was put together by some experts from the University of Florida, and it pretty much, what I call the Bible for growing vegetables here in Florida. It gives you information from site selection, pretty much a lot of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. But if you are new to Florida, I highly recommend you download this publication. So just do a search for Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide, and you will pull this up. It gives you information on varieties to plant, time of year to plant based on where you're in the state, and, pretty much everything that you need. This recently was put in a desktop application, and we have the website there, floridafresh.ifas.ufl.edu. So if you go onto that website, you put in your zip code, it will bring you up a list of plants or vegetables that you can plant this time of year. So this is another great resource that you can access. So this is page 6 of that same vegetable garden guide. And I know this isn't a very good, graphic, but this is just to show you one of the very important, tables that's in that fact sheet. And it gives you all, or pretty much nearly all, of the vegetables that we can grow here in Florida. And it divides the state into north, central, and south. So we're in Central Florida. It gives you the yield per 10 square foot, the number of plants you could put in a 10 square foot area, days to harvest, the spacing within row and between row, the seeding depth, because that's important. And very important also is the plant families. And I'll talk with that about that on another slide. So take, for example, beets. In Central Florida, you can plant beets between September through February. And it's important that you try and stick to that time frame that we have listed. If you plant items outside of that time frame, you're likely to end up with a lot more problems, pest problems, for example. Or if you're growing things like tomato, your tomatoes may not, they may flower, but they may not fruit. So it's important for you to stick to that time frame that is listed here in order for you to be successful. Very important on this is the days to harvest, because some of you may be growing a particular crop for the first time. And what I find is that some people have difficulty determining when to harvest. So if you kind of use that as a guide, and also when you buy, if you buy seeds, the packet will also tell you. But you see there for beets, it's 50 to 70 days to harvest. And broccoli, you can plant broccoli between September through February, and it gives you 2 days for harvest for broccoli. The first one is 90 to 120 days, and that takes into account if you're going to plant your own seedlings. So if you're going to plant your own seedlings, you want to start those at least 6 weeks before your intended planting date. And for us here, or at my home, we plant our cool season crops around November. So after Thanksgiving, because we usually go on Thanksgiving break, and so we usually plant, when we come back from Thanksgiving break, we get them in, and we usually don't have to spray anything because we're sticking within that time frame that's there. So do peruse this document, and you'll find all the help you need there in terms of what to plant when. So soil preparation is very important. And, in real estate, they say location, location, location. And for us, we say soil prep, soil prep, soil prep, because that's going to be important for you to be successful. Now, when you're growing vegetables, you need to have at least 6 to 8 hours of full sun, especially if you're growing something that needs, that's going to flower. So if you're growing tomatoes and peppers, you're going to need 6 to 8 hours of full sun. If you're growing cool season crops like we're talking about today, that you're growing just for the greens, then you can get away with about 5 to 6 hours of sunlight. So that's fine. We like slightly acidic soils for vegetables, so around 6.2 to 6.5. And the pH just tells you how acid or alkaline the soil is. Now, some of you might be coming from states where you're accustomed to liming your soil, and, don't go into the habit of just, starting your garden and liming here in Florida, because our soils naturally have a high pH. So soil test, soil test, soil test. And you can get a soil sample kit from your local extension office, send that off, collect your sample, send it off to the University of Florida for $10. We will tell you the pH and also what nutrients are in the soil. If you're going to, incorporate green material like legumes into the soil, then you need to make sure that you allow 6 weeks before planting for that to decompose. Okay, so seed and seedling selection, very important for some of the cool season crops that we're gonna grow. You can grow some of them from seeds. So beets, for example, carrots, you can grow those from seeds. Now your cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, those type of things, you want to grow these from seedlings. If you purchase seeds, remember I said before, you have to get those seeds started at least 6 weeks before. So kind of factor that in. Now, when you go to purchase your seedlings at the store, you want to purchase seedlings that are healthy. So if you look at the image at the top, that pepper plant is nice and green and lush. You don't see any spots on it. There's no insects. Then this photo at the bottom, this person bought cabbage seedlings that you see that they had these yellow areas on the leaves, and that is a no-no. So they bought them not being healthy, and then they're treating to prevent disease problem. Well, you're starting out on a bad foot right there. And so that particular disease is called black rot of cabbage. And it's a disease that once you have it, it's going to be 3 years before you can plant something else there. So start out with healthy seedlings. Try and avoid plants that are already fruiting. And for the things that we're going to be focusing on today, those are not things that are going to be fruiting, but that would apply to, things that you would start to grow in the spring, like your peppers. Okay, so where do you find your seeds or seedlings? You can go to your local garden center, big box stores. The thing you need to think about with the big box stores is that sometimes items that they have, for sale might not be for our area. So you have to, keep that in mind, because certain things may not be for our area. You can also do mail catalogs, online catalogs. And some of the online catalogs, you can go online and just ask them to send you a hard copy in the mail. So if you're a touchy-feely person, you can get that catalog to actually peruse through. We like to get the, get seeds from the online catalogs, because yes, what you're going to find in the big box stores, for example, they may just say cabbage and not tell you what variety. But if you're big into gardening like us, you want to be able to try different varieties and know how each one perform. And then you can assess the performance and know whether or not you want to plant that particular one. You can also save your own seeds. The items we're going to talk about today, cool season crops, we generally don't save seeds from those. We usually buy seeds, but there are a lot of things that you can grow that you can save seeds from. Now, I'm not advertising for any of these companies, but these are just a few of the many companies from which we purchase seeds. So there are companies that sell heirloom seeds, just that specifically, or there's some that sell a combination of seeds. But when you peruse these catalogs, make sure that you know if the particular variety will do well in our area. Okay, so what are the cool season vegetables that you can grow? Most of them are going to fall in the Brassicaceae family. Some literature you may look at, you may see the family Cruciferaceae, or you may hear them refer to it as cruciferous plants. So it all depends on what literature you're looking at. So the older literature would have crucifers, the more recent would have Brassica family. Now, it's important for you to know what family the vegetables you're growing fall in, because they typically tend to be affected by the same insect and disease problems. So usually you'll see, when I teach classes, I will indicate the plant family so that okay, this is in the same family. And we recommend you keep a map of where you plant your crops each year so that you can rotate. So if you don't rotate every year, at least try every other year to rotate. And that way you're kind of starving the insects or diseases or disease organism, so you don't have a buildup of pest pressure. So here you can see in the Brassica oleracea, you have your cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and so on. Then we also have pak choy, Chinese cabbage, turnip in the Brassica arepa family. Then you have, two types of mustard in the Brassica nigra and Brassica juncea. So you have your mustards, and many of you may not think of radish as related to, cabbage and broccoli and so, but radish is also in the Brassica family. Now, if you're growing vegetables for the very first time, a great morale booster is radish. In 28 to 30 days, you will have something to harvest. So if you want a morale booster, and for those of you who, are trying to introduce kids to gardening, this is something that I always find kids really love, because, they kind of turn up their noses, some of them at first, about growing stuff. But once, they see that in 28 days they can grow radish, they get super excited and want to do more. All right, so some other cool season vegetables that you can plant are your lettuce, and lettuce is in the Asteraceae family. Then you have your Amarantaceae, previously the Chenopodiaceae family. So you have, those are your spinach, your Swiss chard and beet. And then you have your Amaryllidaceae family, which are your onions. And if you're like me, I cook with a lot of onions and garlic. I love my onions. And then you have your Umbellulaceae family, that's your carrots. And Solanaceae family is your white or Irish potato. And the Solanaceae family also have your peppers and tomatoes. So, keep that in mind. Now, I'll show you some onions when I get outside, and you'll see, I'll talk some more specifics about that. So I am going to go outside now and show you some things that I have growing in my garden. So if you have any questions, go ahead and post those in the chat. And Bill, maybe while I get set up, you could show them the Florida Vegetable Garden Guide, the app, the desktop app. So I will be back momentarily.
Okay, let me go ahead and pull that app up.
While you're doing that, Bill, I have to say, Norma, I have just learned so very much, because I am not on the horticulture side of things. I'm on the health and wellness and chronic disease prevention. And I just learned so very much that I need to plant radishes first. And I love the idea of a new tradition at Thanksgiving and going out as a family and planting after Thanksgiving. Just sounds like a fun way to transition into the winter holidays.
I'm going to have to look that up. But we do have one question here already from Dopaw or Dupaw, that they just planted beets January 1st. They were wondering if they should have planted 6 weeks ahead as starter plants. So when Norma gets out there to her garden, we'll try asking her that.
I'm out here.
Oh.
And all right. So I am out in my garden. And what is he trying to grow?
He's trying to grow beets. And there we go. We can see you out in the garden.
Okay.
Dupaw or Dopaw's planted beets January 1st. Should they have planted them 6 weeks ahead as starter plants, or are they going to be okay planting?
Yeah, so they're going to be okay with planting the beets directly. So beets, radish, and turnips, carrots, those are things that you're going to do what we call direct seed. So they don't need to transplant. The thing about those root crops, when you transplant them, you can damage the root. And once you damage the root, then that's going to defeat the purpose unless you're going to eat the greens. Okay, so I'm outside here now, and in my garden, we plant things in containers and also in raised beds. And we have several things growing here. So these are kale. This particular kale is called Siberia Improved. And when we plant these, we usually have these growing until around April. We usually don't have to spray our greens because, as I said, we plant them after Thanksgiving. We've tried planting before like September. And depending on if you have a very warm year, which we're having a lot more warm days now, you still have, a lot of pest pressure from worms. So, I find planting later in the season works for us. So we usually get our greens in, as I said, after Thanksgiving. Now, in the community garden that I work with in Wildwood, we planted in October. And so right now we're already getting ready to harvest broccoli and cauliflower. So October would be a good time to start for you in Central Florida. Now, whenever we're harvesting our kale and collards, instead of cutting the entire plant back, we usually just come in and break off the leaves like that. Okay, so that way this is gonna keep going all season long. If you come in and you cut the entire plant out, then that's it, you know. But if I just come in and I selectively remove the older leaves, then I'm gonna be harvesting collards and kale the entire season. So here we have these are pak choi, and they're kind of like Chinese cabbage is a way to kind of describe the taste. Okay, that's a way to kind of describe the taste. But these you can take the entire plant out. They do need a little fertilizing. You can see that there's some yellowing coming in there, but that's okay. So as you can see, these are pretty healthy. There's not much going on there in terms of insect problems. So this is another tub of kale, and this one is called Premier Kale. Now, notice that we label our items. So if you are trying different varieties for the first time, you want to make sure that you have them labeled. Now, these are our mustard greens, and you harvest your mustard greens the same way as I just described. Then this isn't on the list, but this is ginger we have growing in a tub. And Wendy probably will say yay to having some something other than what I mentioned. But the ginger is about ready to harvest. And let me go over here and see, we have tomatoes that we're still harvesting from what we planted in the fall. Now, here are our greens that we have planted in our raised beds. So these raised beds are made with bricks, and we have a combination here of cabbages, and you can see some of the cabbages are getting ready to fold, and we have some cauliflower here. And this morning, as I came out to look, I noticed that there were some caterpillars on the leaves here, and I didn't kill them because I wanted to show you. So hopefully they're still there. Yes. So if you can see that right there, that is a diamondback moth caterpillar, and this is like the worst insect of cabbage worldwide, and it's very small, but it can cause significant damage. So instead of spraying, all we would do is just come and do like that, and don't be afraid to squish those insects. That's what they get for coming to try to destroy your crop. So other come in and what we call scouting regularly, so you can see what the problems that exist in the garden and getting them under control early. You want to do that regularly in your garden. So these are our cabbages. Then across here, we also have some broccoli. Now, notice that the broccoli looks as if, well, something's wrong with it. And again, yeah, there's some holes, but as I said, we just scout and we kill the insects by hand as we see them. So it doesn't really warrant any warrant any pest control other than hand killing. So the damage that you're seeing here, or the yellowing on these, that is from cold weather damage. So when we were out during the Christmas break, we the temperatures dropped, I guess close to 30, and that caused some of this damage that you see here. Typically, we tend to cover with frost cloth, and we have these poles in the ground on either side, and we put the frost cloth over so that the frost cloth doesn't cover it. So I'm going over here, and here we have our onions. And as I said, we plant a lot of onions. Now, some of you might be familiar with the Vidalia onions that they grow in Georgia. And this is that same onion that we have here, which is the yellow Granex. And the yellow Granex is usually ready in about 90 to 100 days and stores for about 1 to 2 months. Now, notice that in between these, we planted some lettuce. So you can do what we call intercropping. We didn't really have good germination on the lettuce. We sowed the lettuce, but lettuce is one that you can direct seed and thin out, because lettuce seeds aren't really expensive. So you can sow them directly and thin them out if you want. But the germination on these weren't too hot, so we didn't have much with those. So there's a specific thing you have to be concerned about with onions. When you're looking for onions, you want to have what we call short day onions. Do not buy long day onions. Long day onions are for up north. So if you're looking for onions that are going to bulb, you need to buy short day onions. Because they have onions in the store, that doesn't necessarily mean that those onion seedlings you're going to see are short day onions. So if you go in the store, you see a variety you're not familiar with, certainly Google it to make sure that it's a short day variety, or else it's not going to bulb. One last thing I'll talk about before I turn over to Wendy is that you want to have a good fertilization plan for your onion. So before you get your onion slips in the ground, you're going to maybe make a trench about 3 inches deep. You fertilize with 10-10-10, and that 10-10-10 is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You put that in there because you want to know that nutrient is there when the plants start to grow. And then every 2 to 3 weeks, based on your soil type, then you would fertilize with ammonium sulfate. And with that fertilizer, your fertilizer regimen will determine how sweet, and your soil type will determine how sweet your onions are. So as I said, this was just to give you a brief snapshot, and I will now turn things over to Wendy.
Okay, Norma, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, we have a question here from Jeep Fix. They use a 30% shade cloth during the summer because their garden is on a hill and it gets direct sun. Should they remove it now?
Yeah, so they can remove the shade cloth. The sun is not that intense at this time of year. So, but keep in mind, as I said, these plants that we grow this time of year, they can do with less sunlight. But unless the shade cloth, they could keep like for lettuce, things like that. Because lettuce, when it's too hot, they can get bitter, like your lettuce and your mustard. They get bitter when the day temperatures are too hot.
Okay, great. Let me go ahead and get back to that. So Wendy, it's on to you, I guess.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Norma, for the garden tour. I wish I had a garden as large as you do and as producing as you do. I'm looking out in my backyard right now, and I'm thinking I am a little bit inspired to give it a try. So thank you, Norma. So we're going to move on now to selection, preparation, and cooking and storage, and even preserving of some of the veggies that Norma mentioned. We're going to talk about cabbage, cauliflower, and I even have a red cabbage, a little piece of a red cabbage left over. We've got some Brussels sprouts that we'll look at, and then also broccoli. So let's just start with our broccoli. So when you're selecting broccoli, whether it be in the store, you want to choose a broccoli floret that's going to be really tightly packed, which you can see this one is. You can see it's starting to lose a little bit of the floret here, which you can simply cut off. And then let's move on to our cauliflower, which I'm going to prepare this with you guys. I should have purchased two, but I went ahead and start taking off some of the outer leaves because they're very, very strong, which is what you want. Oftentimes, if you can purchase it at a farmer's market, you'll see that the leaves completely cover the crown of the cauliflower. So you just want to start by peeling those back. And of course, always wash your hands. I've already done that and got my gloves on for today. So you're just going to remove those outer leaves like so. It's kind of a workout. So it's a twofer. So you're building strength while you're preparing your veggies. All right, so we're going to remove those outer layers, and look how beautiful and white this is. This one is actually perfect. So you can see here the tight florets. I don't see any browning or any type of spoilage on this particular one. So I'm going to keep working away, and I'm using my bowl for all my scraps here. And simply taking a chef's knife, and I know you won't be able to see this exactly as I'm cutting. However, one trick just to tell you, I don't know who told me this, but using like a wet paper towel underneath your cutting board keeps it from sliding around, so keeping it safe. And I need all the safety help I can get in the kitchen. So I'm just going to cut off that stalk on the bottom. You can see here, a big chunk there. I still have a little bit more to go. So I'm going to try to pick off as much as I can because I don't want to waste any of the cauliflower florets. All right, so we're almost there. Once you can see the stem of the florets, then you can use a paring knife and easily cut those off. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on so you can see that here. And just going to use a paring knife. And this is where I'm going to be cutting here. So right at the base. So you're going to have your mini trees of cauliflower. So, and it just breaks apart. So you can see how that works. I'm going to just do a couple more because we're going to be making a stir fry in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and cut some of these off. And sometimes you can see that there's going to be a little bit of a leaf cut that just flipped right off. So we'll add this to our bowl for our stir fry. All right, hang in there with me for just a moment. It's easy to prepare. Now in the store, you can find these already prepared where you wouldn't have to do the extra work. But I will say from my experience, I use both, but you definitely can find a lot fresher, less spoilage when you can cut it yourself. So I'm going to go around, add those in. And cauliflower, it can be eaten raw. You can boil it. And if you have ideas of ways you use cauliflower, just put it in the chat. You can use cauliflower rice. Some people use it for a pizza crust. And I know actually one of our extension agents in Sumter County has done a really good video on how to make cauliflower rice. And it's pretty simple. All right, I think I'm down to the bones. Here we go. So we've got a lot of different florets here to go into our stir fry. So I'm going to break them apart a little bit just so they're a little more consistent for cooking. All right, so that's for the cauliflower, prep and select. So again, with our broccoli, you can see here, I've already pre-cut the broccoli, but what you're going to do here is you're actually going to slice down at the base. I'm going to go back to my chef's knife. Let me wash real quick. So kind of keep it food safe. So anytime you're changing vegetables, or definitely don't want any cross-contamination. So I am using the same cutting board for today, but you would want to go ahead and clean that as well. So cutting down at the base, don't get rid of this stalk. This is usable. We don't want any food waste. Simple and easy. You've got your bright green broccoli. That was one thing I didn't mention. Whenever you're selecting, you want that nice bright color. Go ahead and do a little bit more slicing. And then you're going to break it into florets, which I've already got ready to go in our bowl for our stir fry. Now let's look at the stalk of our broccoli. So with the stalk, again, this can be used. It's got a really tough outer layer. So what you're going to want to do is, probably for this long one, I'm going to cut it in half just for safety. And then you're going to take and you're going to slice off the edge. You can see the difference. So here's the hard side. And then a nice tender side. You don't want to waste that. So you're going to cut each of the layers off, which I've already done on this one. You can see it's nice and soft. And look how cute this is. So we've taken the broccoli stem now and we've got it in little diced sections. I guess it's more like, it's not the right term for cutting. I'm not a chef, so you guys get with me. They look like little mini French fries, but they're broccoli. So we're going to use that for our stir fry as well. All right, so we've talked about cauliflower, broccoli. Let's go on to cabbage in selection. So with the selection, you do want a bright green color. I'm going to take off the outer leaves for preparation, but you want to make sure it doesn't have any yellowing, any visible signs of damage. Definitely no pests. Of course, I hear they don't eat too much, but I'm just kidding. So I'm going to remove that outer layer just because it is a little tough. And so for the cabbage, again, you're going to do very, very similar. You see that there's the root portion here. I want to cut through that. So I'm going to flip it over, but I want to go right into that root. So I'm going to go down and it cuts it nicely. So you can see here, it looks nice and tight inside. So this is really bitter. So we don't want to eat that. So we're going to cut that out. But to make it a little bit easier, and I have a slide in a minute that I'll share with you that I cut out a V shape here, but I felt like I wasted a lot of the cabbage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually flip it on the flat surface here, and I'm going to cut it again straight through that stem. And now it's going to make it a lot easier to cut that out. So I'm just going to cut it at an angle. And we're good to go. So I did the same thing with our red cabbage, and I just feel like you save so much more. All right, so before we go on to the preparation and slicing the cabbage, I wanted to look at our Brussels sprouts. So obviously when they come out on the stem, if you can buy them at the farmer's market on the stem, that'd be great. If not, oftentimes you'll find them in a plastic bag that you can purchase from the store, or you can measure yours out. So what you're looking for is, again, those tightly packed leaves. I got really, really lucky, and I had bought a prepackaged one for today's talk. But previously I've bought some and they were pre-washed, but I will tell you, they didn't look so pre-washed. And I had to remove a lot of the outer layer leaves. Now, a little yellowing on your Brussels sprouts is going to be okay. But if you choose to remove the outer leaf, you can. And then what it looks like, you can see it may not be quite as green. So here I've removed a few of the leaves that didn't look so great, but we're going to get that one ready to go for we're not adding this one into the stir fry, but I'm going to give you some other methods. All right, so let's go ahead and take our cabbage and get that ready. So we've got it in 4s. So all I'm going to do now, and I'll see if I can bring this down just a hair. Hopefully it doesn't close on us. I'm going to take the cabbage here, and I'm simply going to cut straight down. I'm going to do 4 layers or 4 cuts. I'm going to turn it on its side. I'm only going to take half just to be on the safe side, and go ahead and do 4 more cuts. And I see here, I actually left a little bit of that stem in there, so it's easy to cut off. And we'll throw it into the compost pile. And then we've got cabbage to prepare or add in our stir fry. So that one is ready to go. Okay, so we've done our cauliflower, we've done our cabbage, broccoli, and Brussels sprouts. So with Brussels sprouts, Bill, if you can bring that slide back up for me, that would be great. That way I can show you some of the ideas for cooking before we actually go into cooking our stir fry. So if you see in this image here, obviously I've got the cabbage on the left and moving across. That's where I took the big V cutout, and I really felt like I wasted a little bit too much cabbage. So I like the cutting it in fours. Obviously, if you're using cabbage for other purposes, whether it's sauerkraut or let's say you're putting it into a soup, there's different ways that you can prepare it and cut it. Now with your Brussels sprouts, again, obviously we always want to wash our produce just under running water. You don't need any special rinse. Making sure that all the visible dirt is away and gone. I know I use a vegetable brush. That's really handy, especially for these tough veggies. All right, so let's jump to the next slide. Here, okay, so I have prepared everything, which I'm so proud because I'm not a chef, but I do try. On the top left, I took my cabbage and made cabbage steaks. And all it is, instead, when I sliced it in fours, it doesn't stay together really well. But you can do this also with the cauliflower, and it's delicious. Just slicing those and roasting them in the oven for, I would say about 30 minutes, depending upon how soft you want it. A little olive oil, salt and pepper, delicious. Once it's roasted, you can eat it as a side dish, add some protein. You can also put it into a salad, just as any way you like it. You can also eat it raw. All right, so in the second is just simple steamed broccoli. I wanted you to see is how bright that color is. So adding just a minimal amount of water to be able to steam it. You want to maintain that bright color. Then the set next to the broccoli, you can see that's a cabbage soup. I wish I would have added a little more onion to add a little bit more flavor, but it's very simple. It's basically just throwing a bunch of veggies in, adding in some low sodium stock, and you're ready to go. Then next, you're going to see the Brussels sprouts. Now, I have heard a variety of ways to prepare Brussels sprouts. My favorite is, again, roasting. You can leave them whole, but these are pretty large, so I would likely cut them, put them into a plastic bag with a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, and shake it up, and then put it out on that baking sheet. I have heard that people like to eat Brussels sprouts with bacon, and all foods fit. So a little bacon goes a long way. So maybe a couple of strips, maybe not a half a pound, just to keep it healthy. So that is one option as well. And then finally, what you see, I had so much fun with this one. This was the different cabbage that I just simply sauteed, which is similar to what we'll be doing today. And what I did is I split the recipe. So instead of using all of the cabbage and adding soy sauce, I split it. Half was used for a stir fry to add some brown rice and a protein. And then the other half we're using for tacos. So I'm very excited about that. So I think we are almost ready to jump over to our stir fry cam. So let's do that. All right.
Okay, we have the stir fry cam on.
Stir fry cam is ready. So I'm going to go ahead and turn our heat up to about medium high. Let our pan warm up for just a second. I'm going to be using a vegetable oil, which you can see, any vegetable oil that basically your oils that aren't solid at room temperature. And you could use, let's say, olive oil. Canola oil is another healthier oil option to use. Wouldn't recommend olive oil because it has such a low heat temperature or heat point. So let's go ahead and see if that's gotten a little. We're going to add about a tablespoon of oil, not a whole lot. You don't need too much. And as that heats up, we're going to be adding in broccoli. I threw in some orange bell peppers, and we've got 2 different colors of our cabbage. And then also our broccoli stems. So those are what I'm going to use today. I typically would have used onion also, but I ended up using it in a different recipe on another day. So all the veggies that we've mentioned today are a good source of fiber. They're going to be high in vitamin C. Okay, we are ready. So we're going to add in first some of our tougher veggies. Let's start with our cauliflower. And we're going to add those in. Go ahead and add some of that in. And our cabbage. We're not quite heated up yet. All right, so we're going to dump that in. And here it's starting to sizzle. So the important thing with stir fry is you want to keep it moving. All right, so we're adding it all in. I'm a little bit of a messy cook. I wish there was a good reason behind that, but all right. So again, lots of fiber. All the veggies that you see here are going to be naturally fat and cholesterol free. They're going to be very low in sodium. So if you're trying to aim for a heart healthy diet, this is one way to do that. It's what we add to our vegetables, which typically makes it a little unhealthy. All right, very low in calories. All right, so let's get this going. So I'm going to let these stir fry for probably about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes for all of these more dense veggies. Add some color in there. It would be kind of boring if I just had the broccoli and the cabbage by itself, the green cabbage by itself. Another great thing to add, like I'm adding orange pepper, just because orange bell pepper is just what I had on hand. Normally I would add in onions here too. It just adds a lot of color. We eat with our eyes. So let's keep that. I don't know if you guys can hear it sizzling or not. So I won't take you through the whole process of this. I'm going to let it keep going. And then we're going to fast forward. Let's say it's been 3 to 5 minutes, and we're going to add in our beautiful orange bell peppers. Look how it just changes the dish. So lunch is at about 11:30, so come on over. You can add, again, some brown rice and your protein of choice. You could add chicken, any type of lean meat. You could do a fish on the side, tofu, if you're plant-based. All right, so I'm going to let this continue. One thing you can do is if you, at the end, if you wanted to add in soy sauce, you can do about 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I would aim for like a low sodium soy sauce if available. Another option is to take a teaspoon of soy sauce. You can add a little bit, about 3/4 teaspoon of cornstarch and water, and even a little bit of sugar, a sprinkle of sugar, add that in, and it's going to really glaze those veggies more so if you like it to stick on the veggies. And what if you notice here on the stir fry too, as we are moving those veggies around, the colors are getting brighter, and I love it. It's exciting. All right, Bill, I think we're going to bring it back to the kitchen prep pan. I'm going to go ahead and turn this down while we're wrapping it up.
Okay, wow, I'm ready for lunch now.
Isn't it so pretty? And it's so easy. That's the one thing that's so important for me personally. I like you've heard me say, I'm not a chef, and I am a cook in progress. Every time I'm in the kitchen, I always say it's an experiment because I don't really know what's going to happen. I'm not consistent in the kitchen, so this is one that is simple, easy to use.
And those are all things that you can actually grow in your backyard in Central Florida during the winter.
You got it. You got it. So on the last few slides there, Bill, I wanted to share some resources with you guys for storage and also preservation. And those links, so storing cabbage, you can see consume within 1 to 2 weeks from the date of purchase. The biggest thing is like when you get the cabbage, if you're buying it at a farmer's market, if you just put it in a plastic bag or a plastic wrap, that'll help to keep it a little bit better. And also with Brussels, cauliflower and broccoli, if it's refrigerated, it needs to be consumed within that 3 to 5 days of purchase, but you can freeze it also. There is the Food Keeper app, which was developed by the USDA. This is an excellent app. So if you ever wonder, if you're looking in your refrigerator and you see some things you're not sure if it's been in there too long, that's the app to go to. They do have a app for your phone as well as a desktop application. And it's very, very useful. I get a lot of calls, especially after the hurricane, whether or not to keep foods that they have in the refrigerator. That app will help you out. All right. Looking good.
Don't let it burn.
I know. I might have to take it off. I don't want to lose my veggies. I'm going to take it off the burner. Sorry. The cam had to move. All right. Let's jump on to the next slide because I see we're getting close to time. And preserving. The greatest website, the National Center for Home Food Preservation. It's run by the University of Georgia. And this is where you can find out more information on how to preserve cabbage. You can see on the slide there. It's really good for freezing. Our words got a little shifted there, but that's okay. You can see most of the vegetables today are really easy to freeze. You just have to do a quick water blanch, get them really dry, put them in a food safe container or freezer safe container and into the freezer. But if you go to this website, it has information on canning. It has information on freezing, drying. I believe there's a few recipes on fermenting, but this is where kind of your go-to resource for anything that has been tested. So we know that the items, the recipes that you find on this website are going to be safe to prepare. And Norma, do you want to share some of your resources? I know we had the infographic, the app that I just mentioned, as well as the National Center for Home Food Preservation.
Sure. So I already mentioned the USDA Plant Hardiness Zone Map and the Florida Vegetable Gardening Guide. And I saw someone mention that my garden is worth revisiting. So a place where you can see my garden is on the Let's Talk Gardening YouTube channel. So if you just Google UF IFAS Let's Talk Gardening, you will find information there. I have lots of videos from what I had to do during the pandemic. And most of them are from my backyard. And my co-host, Lisa, she did her sessions from our IFAS Extension office in Sumter. But do check out that YouTube channel. You'll see a lot there about my backyard and what I grow throughout the year. Also, I have a very intensive vegetable gardening course called Grow Your Plate Vegetable Gardening. It's a 10-part series. It's on Canvas. I'm going to have a free version and a paid version. If you'd like a certificate, you can do the paid version and you'll have quizzes and, additional things to do. So the free version, you won't have to do any quizzes, but plan for each session for about an hour and a half of, presentation, and then you have the other activities, but it's something you'll be able to do at your own leisure. So before this series is up, the course will be live and we will be able to give you more information.
And then also, I know in the chat you see there is a link for next class, as well as those upcoming reminders, as well as food system classes that we have upcoming. So do sign up that way. We have your email address so we can reach out to you for more information. And we will be, I think we've got, in addition to the poll question, we do have a link to a quick survey, which we would be so appreciative. It really helps us to improve what we're doing and continue doing the work that we do here with UF IFAS Extension online and live for you. And if you have ideas for future sessions, or we are open.
Yes, I've been putting all those links in the chat box for you to click on. And the poll question is a very, very easy one. We're just asking you, is this the first University of Florida extension class that you've participated in?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're new to University of Florida Extension teaching and classes and workshops, you'd say yes. And if you've been to a million of them before, then you'd say no. So we're just curious about how many people are new to University of Florida IFAS Extension programming here today.
Thank y'all so much for joining us today. It was a lot of fun for me. I learned a lot myself.
Okay, here, real quickly before we go, if anybody has any further questions and they want to reach out and email me, there is my email. I also have Wendy's email, so if you need any stir fry or cooking advice, you can go ahead and contact Wendy. And also for if you have any vegetable gardening questions, there's Norma's email also. We're here to help. We're here to answer your questions. If I don't know the answer, I know somebody smarter than me that I can share it with who does know the answer. So we'll get it figured out for you one way or the other. And wow, we're almost exactly right on time. It's 11:01. I'm not usually that good with time. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to come back next Friday and then for the next couple Fridays after that. And hopefully we will see you then. And until next week, take care and goodbye.
Bye, y'all.